Welcome to Best Practice, a show where we interview leaders in the building industry to unpack the strategies, tactics, and techniques they use to run great organizations. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Allen Schaffer, COO and Chief Sustainability Officer at Moody Nolan, in a conversation about how to design sustainable operations. So Moody Nolan is the largest African-American owned and managed firm in the country and was the 2021 recipient of the AIA Architecture Firm Award. As COO, Allen partners with firm leadership and staff to create operational efficiencies that allow Moody Nolan to deliver project excellence and high value to clients. He's responsible for implementing established day-to-day operation strategy, veracity of project financial controls, and assures positive results from firm operations. In his role as Chief Sustainability Officer, Allen brings more than 20 years of experience in addressing the impact of integrated design solutions on environmental, social, and financial aspects of projects. His background encompasses a diverse portfolio, including sports, higher education, corporate office, civic, and healthcare on a national and an international level. Special thanks goes out to Latoya Nelson Camdang. Latoya is Director of NY Operations at Moody Nolan, and she helped us set up this conversation. We're actually going to be bringing on Latoya and her colleague Dawn, who I'll mention later in this chat, in a few weeks. I haven't announced it yet, so this is the first time you're hearing about it, but I'm very excited about this. It's going to be an awesome return episode of Moody Nolan as we focus on New York, specifically in October for Archtober. So we've got some other really incredible guests for that month. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today, Allen.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I'd love to start with this question that we've been asking in our community interviews in general, which is, what is your lens on practice?
This is a tough question. There's a lot going on right now in our practice with the amount of work that seems to have been on hold or held back by clients last year. But I think for me, our lens has really been trying to think more into the future. We think our industry is really ready to really take on a challenge of doing things differently than the way we've been doing things for the past 100 years. I mean, construction has been essentially done the same way for quite a while. And we've got to shift. I mean, our clients are demanding that our delivery methods change. And this, I'm talking in general, and from the financing to the design to the construction, the turnaround time that it's taking, that has always taken us to do that, I think is really being challenged. And I think our industry, including the construction industry's issue, is we really have never done a lot of research and development and how do we do this differently. There's always been, people have been trying to do things a little bit differently. People are building buildings out of, with robots and stuff, but it's really not, it seems to always go back to what we're comfortable with. And we're starting to feel the pressure that clients, and I think in our industry, we're ready to shift. So I think that is something that we're trying to position ourselves to be able to be part of that shift.
What's your approach to leading operations and sustainability at Moody Nolan?
To me, my years have always, it's about communication, either in operations or in sustainability. You've got to be able to communicate clearly up and down the line. And that clear communication is about people really understanding, using the same words. We're having these conversations about, you use a word that everybody in our industry uses: market, office, studio. We use those words, but then have we defined for us what that means, so that when we talk about a market, somebody may think that that means a physical office place and not the geographical business development area. So those communication protocols, scheduling consistent touch base calls, I think is something that I've gotten more used to. They seem like they take time, but when you've got them scheduled and they're short, and actually you create, even if it's quick, short agendas, I talk with our CEO, just he and I, every other week. We keep a little Teams page where he and I will drop topics as we go along through the week real quick. You can do that with your phone. When it comes across, you don't forget. And then we look at that real quick and say, okay, we've got 20 minutes. What are the top two that we need to go through together? So, our executive team, we get together every morning for 20 to 30 minutes, again, to talk about key issues that we need to address right now. We started that at the beginning of COVID. And I mean, it started out from I'm sure most people on here had to deal with the same thing. We went from 210 people in 11 offices to 200 to 200 people at home in 3 days. So, how do you do that? We had lots of issues of what do we do with this? So that the leadership to me is about communication at all levels.
What's your typical work week, month, and quarter in your role? I like hearing about some of these call cadences, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that work week, that month scale, and then that quarter scale.
Well, there's nothing typical. I think that's the other thing about my role as Chief Operating Officer. It's new. I've been in this role for about a year and a half. Moody Nolan never had a specific Chief Operating Officer. We had various individuals taking on those tasks. But as we've grown to this scale, our chairman and CEO determined we needed somebody specific to that role. So, I'm an architect by training, led projects, all of those things that but then helped lead a studio of, 18, 20 people. But now it's to scale that up. So how do we do so that's, and of course, our CEO and I had a plan going into January of last year, and we got through, a month and a half, and then it blew up. So, my typical day is really, like I said, I've got standing meetings that I've set up with our chief financial officer, our HR group, our technology group, talking about staffing, and I get so trying to be consistent about those and saying, we're using those to talk through and make decisions on topics. So that's kind of those are, they're not every day. They're typically either once a week or once every other week. So I sort of have those standing meetings that I have, and then I get filled in. Can you be on this call? And I've got these answers. So it's organizing the emails to either set up meetings that we have to talk through, answering those. And then I get phone calls. Now I'm still working at home. I go into the office maybe once a week now for the past month or so. Part of that is purposeful. I'm able to control my time better here because Teams is, while being, we use Teams mostly for our communication, but there is a value to being able to schedule. Somebody can't just walk in on me. They call me, but I don't have to take the call necessarily. So there's, and in general, Moody Nolan, we're still very much flexible, hybrid. We haven't set any specific requirements of our staff. So we're trying to be very flexible across the firm. So my daily changes, depending on what needs to be done. I have, to get things done is usually before or after hours. So trying to start 7:30, 7:30, getting things done before those meetings start. And then, after 5, to get the things I need to get done. Quarterly, monthly, we talk, we're setting up more stringent structure about reviewing performance. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but trying to be consistent about the data that we're looking at and evaluating that, and then talking to folks about what that means. So that's where I want to be monthly. If it's billings, collections, staffing, dealing with the issues all related to those to help our studios engage in those conversations. How do we move forward with that? And then quarterly, we've always had quarterly meetings. Senior leadership has gotten together every quarter for as long as I've been at Moody Nolan, which has been 11 years. And I understand these go, Moody Nolan's 38 years old, so they've been going on for at least 30 years, from what I understand. And in those meetings, we focus, they've gone on as we've grown, they've really changed in focus. We do a big summary. Chairman gets on, talks about state of the firm, how he sees things, how the leadership is seeing things move, informing folks of, here's where we are financially, here's where we are project-wise, staffing-wise, those sorts of things. And then over the last year and a half, we've actually, this Teams thing has really helped us with these meetings, because Teams allows us to break quickly into sessions. We have breakout sessions. There's probably 50 to 70 people on these. We break them into groups. We have a setup call. We actually use Miro as a tool for the last 4 sessions. Great. Here's an issue. We take an hour and a half, get into the weeds, outcomes. Here's what we want to do. Here's suggestions on what actions we want to take. And so, and then on quarterly, what I'm doing is operations is talking about what's coming up, projecting out for the next 6 months on staff. Where are we at financially? Talking to the CFO and human resources about how we may want to act to that. And then myself, along with our managing partner, then we go back to the partners. We're a partnership, and say, okay, here's the data that we have. Here are the issues we're seeing coming up. Partners, what is our big picture strategy here? And then we can take that back and implement those strategies. So it's really every day it's micro stuff, and then the big stuff, pushing it out to weekly, monthly, and quarterly.
What was the state of the firm when you joined Moody Nolan?
Oh, that so I joined 11-ish years ago. So that was the middle of the recession. So I looked up some, in that time, 2009, about 7,000 architecture jobs were being lost a quarter. So I was part of that. I was now part of the reason I was brought on to Moody Nolan. This is one of the things I love about the firm. We're extremely diverse in our project types. So that Moody Nolan, I think we lost, during that recession, we may have lost 5 to 6 people. We didn't lay anybody off. We lost people through attrition. But I was able to be added at that time because they had work. And in that it was in the sport world. So they had a need. They had work that they were short on staff. And I was able to join them. So that at that time, Moody Nolan was struggling like everybody else, but we were actually in a pretty good position compared to other firms. And then we were able to solidify that, and then we've just been growing ever since.
Well, what's really fascinating about your current position is this joint chief role, COO, which is more common, but then also chief sustainability officer. And the fact that both of them are the same person is so fascinating. I'm curious where you see operations and sustainability overlap, and I'm curious also where do you see them as distinct?
Yeah, this was a great question, by the way. I think I looked at it as where it overlaps is, to me, one of the big keys of sustainability is reducing, where we're trying to reduce impact, reduce energy, water use, um, you know, and that's what operations is too. Is how do we not let things get out of control, right? Because you're trying to provide the best value to the client, um, with a reasonable fee, and we're in business, we're trying to make money, so how do we do those things, keep the value. The other thing that it's an overlap is really both of these are about people. On the operations side, it's really about our staff and serving our client, and on the sustainability side, to me, it's about, we want to have a place for our children and your children and their children that they can enjoy being, and that's not just on the environmental side, but the places that we live and work. So where they're distinct, I think I always saw that sustainability uh, is about generating solutions that don't necessarily go project to project. You're trying to create solutions that are addressing client goals, and the solution is not always the same. It's in the 15 years ago, the big energy solution was geothermal. That's the answer. No matter what the project is, that's what you were doing. Well, and that usually turned out not to be the case. So you were always using, yes, the solutions that you were used to, but you were always challenged to what is the best solution for this project. And operations is really not that. We need consistent but flexible processes and procedures so that that people, especially across multiple offices, multiple studios, are being consistent, so we're not recreating the wheel all the time, because that's just a waste of time. So to me, that's the difference is that I've seen between the two.
Staying a little bit on this topic, for firms that are looking to build out their operations leadership, where do you think that they should look? And I'm curious if you think that sustainability might be a strong talent pool for ops leaders that maybe others are not seeing.
And again, this was another interesting question, because I know two of my colleagues that at other firms, they had similar roles where they were both operations and sustainability, and they didn't last very long that way, because as they explained to me when I talked to them about it over the past few years, those roles have really expanded for both in their firms and for Moody Nolan, and it just got to be too much for one person. So Moody, we just hired somebody, a junior person in the sustainability part of our firm to help do that, and it's I'm looking at higher level stuff now, and we just moved somebody else up to a director position where she's dealing on more of the day-to-day project stuff. So, and I think part of it is I thought, why is that? Why was that the case for them, and why was that necessarily the case for me? And I think to me the connection was that it's a diversity in thought. And so to me, sustainability has always been about thinking about being able to think about things in large scale, and then making connections that others may not be seeing, and how to integrate a design solution that may be different than what you always do. So what are really the connections between what the goals that the client has, and how do we get to a better solution? Because it's always interesting to see how an energy solution is not just about the HVAC system, and it's about there may be something outside that, and you need the landscape architect and the civil engineer to engage in a conversation about energy. And those kind of connections to me are what I've seen in sustainable design leaders, And I think though that sort of thinking is what you need at operations, because you're making connections on operations of things you never really thought about before as a project leader, or you're focused on marketing or just design, and you start going, well, we've got to make we're getting low on how does technology then impact the design that we're doing. They absolutely do. And having that knowledge and that experience with the design process helps you then talk to the IT and computer people about why we should be doing this, or challenging them to investigate how we can do that differently and what does that look like. So for me, if you're looking for an operations lead or a sustainability lead, in both, I think you're looking internally first, because one thing about operations is, even if you want to change things, if you're in business, you're doing something good. You can't lose those, and the people you have internally understand that. They understand why that's a value, and so even though you may want to tweak certain things, you're not necessarily looking to change everything. And I think there's if you're bringing somebody in from the outside, their first instinct may be everything's broken, we got to change it all, and there's got to be a balance. And I think that internal having that internal person who understands the firm culture is really helpful.
In a few weeks, we're going to be talking with your colleagues, Latoya Nelson Camdang and Don David Pierre, who are leading the New York office. I'm curious what your working dialogue is with Latoya and Don, especially in those different time scales, like the quarterly or monthly or weekly.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and you're going to have a great conversation with them. There's been so much going on in New York. Our New York office is fairly new. It's 5-ish years old. And Latoya's been with us for almost 2 years now as the leader there. And that office has grown from essentially 2-3 people a little over a year ago to we're 20 now there. So incredible growth. So what does that mean? How do you deal with that kind of growth? So that's what we talk about. We've been in a WeWork space or WeWork type. I don't think it's exactly WeWork, but we had a collaborative space that we were in up until COVID hit. And COVID, everybody went home, and so she's hired. We've hired that many people. I think they've all been together once, just because of New York. And but we're going to be moving into a new office in October. Well, hopefully things are in a position where we can get some of those folks actually into the space. So looking for that space. How many, what kind of space do we want? How big should it be? Thinking about the future. What kind of people do we want in those space? What kind of projects are we pursuing? So all of those things, we've been talking at varying levels. So big strategic, monthly, and quarterly when we talk with the bigger firm, but then even on a daily basis. Hey, we've got a need for this. How are we going to deal with that? Hey, those computers that were supposed to get here didn't get here. Now what? So we talk about those issues. Recently, it's been really when needed, and which has been fairly often. So we do have, I try to touch base with our operations leads in each of our offices at least quarterly. But it usually ends up being more than that because we have issues that we need to deal with.
What's an interesting success as a result of that growth from 2 to 20, or maybe just another development underway, like as you're trying to plan for as the New York office is trying to plan for that move, potentially hybrid or to some degree as COVID withstanding, that we should make sure to discuss with Latoya and Don?
Well, I think the type of work that Moody Nolan is interested in doing, which is urban kind of focused with community based. Um, I think those they've been coming to us. I mean, Latoya's got and Dawn both have wide networks in New York, but there's it's a monster city with lots of work going on. But we've had people coming to us with the understanding of the type of work that we're trying to do, which is what they're trying to do. I mean, we have a philosophy. It's called responsive architecture, and it means that we're trying to respond to the needs of the client and what their goals are, and how can we serve that. In New York, it's how do we serve the community? So they've got some great experiences with some pro bono work that was done actually during last year that was pretty incredible about how do you create public spaces that are safe for doing work and study, and that was a big collaborative effort between multiple design firms and others. So I think those are the things that we've seen a really exciting success so far in our ability to engage the New York market, and it's kind of work that we've always been interested in doing.
That's really interesting. When Latoya was connecting us, she mentioned how you're leading current macro strategy at Moody Nolan. I'd love if you could talk a little bit about what that is, what it means, and what kind of questions you've been working through at the macro strategy level.
Yeah, I think the two big things that we're working on at a macro level is structured growth. So we are now over 260 people. We started the year at 220, and well, I saw that was the number. We've been growing every year for the last 5 years, pretty steadily, and we're looking to continue to grow. But we want it to be structured. We don't want to grow just to grow. We want to move into markets that I just talked about that have the capacity to do the type of work that we really would like to do, that is about community, and providing solutions to clients that are really meaningful and valuable to them. And so sometimes you try to be structured about your growth, about where you want to grow, but most of our growth has come out of a project. So we're in New York because of our collaborative effort that we had on the Javits Center with TVS Design, and we're in Boston right now because of we were engaged in a project there with Elkis Manfredi on a hotel. So those we weren't necessarily planning on being in Boston. It was one of our goal cities. But that phone call made that difference. Now, in growing through the project typologies that we're really interested. And our other strategy along with that structure is diversity. And what we mean by diversity is not just diversity of gender or race. It's a diversity of project typology. It's a diversity of thought. We're really interested in working with different types of consultants that are challenging us and that allow us to challenge them. We want a diversity in client typologies. Again, I talked about we don't have that diversity of client and market allows us to grow and to be a little bit more steady. So when one market is down, there's usually another one up. Well, we have the ability to move from between those. So that diversity and diversity in people, and again, when we talk about diversity in people, it's their their background, their education type, their our our HR, our director of HR is actually a lawyer, right? So she brings a very different perspective on issues than maybe an HR director that was purely educated in that. So that's what we mean by diversity. It is all of that, and we believe that that diversity provides us with the ability um, to give clients a very different perspective and a solution that really meets what they're trying to get to.
It's interesting to hear about some of the success stories like in Boston and New York, but I'd love to hear about perhaps the most famous internal success stories like nationally or maybe at the headquarters at Moody Nolan that the firm like actively tries to recreate, maybe in different markets. But yeah, I'd love to hear like if there's one or a few, the most famous internal stories that Moody Nolan has been basically repeating for a while or is really trying to repeat now that it was a recent success.
Yeah, Kurt Moody is the founder, and he's now the current chairman of the firm, and he likes to talk about firsts. You know, so you introduced us with, you know, the largest African American owned firm in the country. So there are a lot of firsts that came along with him. Part of the reason Kurt started this firm is because he saw an opportunity to be the first in, because it was you know, he started in 1982. So in that time frame in Columbus, Ohio, there were very few African American owned architect and engineering firms, and he thought he could do better, and that he had the ability. So one of the game changer for us, we actually call them breakthrough projects, was the Schottenstein Center at Ohio State University. So this is the basketball venue for the Buckeyes, 20,000 seat arena. You know, this was 2000-ish kind of time frame. You know, we as a firm, we had done a lot of sport work since the 80s, but we'd never done an arena. We'd never done that scale of project. You know, Kurt played basketball for Ohio State back in the 70s, so he had this was personal to him. So that project, you know, we developed a team. We had a bold sport expert on the team, but we were the lead architect. We did the design work, and that really pushed us forward of showing we can do this kind of work. And we've had other firsts since then, and you know, hopefully we may be on the cusp of another one here pretty soon, where, you know, I think part of that is those firsts, though, are always collaborative with somebody else, be it a client, a community, another design firm, to really push that envelope of what is able to be done. So that's the most exciting internal that Kurt always comes back to. They didn't think we could do it. We did it.
What's an integrated design solution, coming back to your sustainability basis, that you're most proud of, where Moody Nolan synthesized environmental, social, and financial issues?
Yeah, for me, for right now, that project is our in Cleveland. We did a project for the University Hospital System. It's called Renouveau Center for Women and Children. The University Hospital System, their main hospital is on the east side of town. It's in a really depressed part of town. That used to be the core of the city way back, and it's really struggled since the 70s. Their chairman and leaders at University Hospitals, they've been really making an effort over the last 8 to 10 years to engage in the community and serve a part of the community that's really underserved, and in this case, you know, children and women in that part of town. So they engaged us for doing this project. It's about a 40,000 square foot building that has a diversity of programs in it. It's mostly clinics that serve that community. So part of our solution that was really driven by the health system, it wasn't just let's plop a building over here. The site was very purposeful. It was located not on their main campus. It's close, but it is out in the community. It was put on a site that has been a blighted site that's been that way for 25 years. Something, it was along those lines. But it's a major intersection. So there's the main bus system. There's this runs right down that street. So it allows, because a lot of these people do not have access to a car, so they would get there by bus. We had multiple community meetings where we engaged the community with the university about what. So it wasn't just about from a design solution standpoint. It was mostly about program, and the university system was really interested in, okay, what kind of women-based program and clinics would really help them, and how do you set them up? So it's not just about we have a space for women who are expecting. So, but what other support programs? So it's not just about the medical side. It's health. It's mental health. It's job security. It's educational programs. So those we worked with them to help develop the program in detail, and then created a solution that engaged the neighborhood. So the building is inviting, and then they were interested about how that the building, along with the program, is giving back to the community. So there's park amenities that are part of the project that the community can use. We use those park amenities to help with stormwater from a sustainability standpoint. The project achieved LEED Platinum, so it has a small energy footprint. The materials are healthy inside to, again, to support health. And there's educational elements to it. Part of that back to the community is how does a facility, a building, a physical thing help support health, energy. So there's education on using photovoltaics to provide energy back. Describing the materials that are for health, and the landscape itself. These plants are native to Cleveland. We don't need to water them. This time of year, when it's of course it's a wet year, but when there's not as much rain, usually it's dry in Cleveland beginning this time. So you want plants that can survive this and then be ready again next year. So all of those things were part of an educational program that was put together.
What are some of the most critical operational processes at Moody Nolan?
I think to me the biggest ones are, it's kind of what I just sort of talked about, is delivering design solutions for our clients. It's what we do. So how do the operations support that, from the technology we provide to getting appropriate staff, then the staff is that part of it. We can't do any of these things for our clients without really talented, smart people, and treating them in a way that wants them to stay here and wants them to build and wants them, giving them the ability to use their talents. To me, those are the two critical things that we're trying to do from an operations standpoint. We're support of the design talent that we have in the firm.
What have you seen as maybe the most critical project financial controls to keep a close eye on?
There's again, two things to me have always stood out. One is clients are looking to us to help them understand and control construction budgets. So how do we, as the architectural team and our whole design team, help them understand the financial controls that they need to have in order to meet their budgets? And then internally, it's about the work plan. It's about us understanding our contract, what we're hired to do, setting a work plan that allows us to do the work, but within the fee structure that we have, and then you got to monitor it. And it doesn't matter what work plan you put together, it's always going to change. So you got to be able to understand how to adjust, but you can't adjust if you're not monitoring. So to me, those are the two critical financial controls that we keep an eye on weekly, monthly, quarterly basis.
And when you're watching, monitoring, and adjusting internally, how do you assure that the firm's actually getting positive results from these operations?
I'll go back to that communication. So once we've got expectations of our project leaders about what they're supposed to be watching and feeding information back to a larger but smaller group of people. And then there's on the firm-wide side, we have data sets that we're looking at to monitor, where's that cliff coming, or where's that hill coming, to say we've got to ramp up, or what are we going to do if we're not able to secure enough work to get to this point where there's a cliff. So that assurance has to come through watching these data sets and getting the data in to the systems that we use to begin with, so we can project those things out and then communicate with each other of, this is what we're seeing. Are you seeing the same thing? Yes, no, why? And then asking the question to the leaders about, what are we going to do about it?
You mentioned earlier structured growth. How do you design sustainable operations?
You have a strategic plan. You got what from a sustainable operation standpoint, what do you want to achieve? Because those operations go from, is it project-based stuff? Is it things that you want to do as a firm itself? Do you have a recycling program internally? Because those are really two different things. The things you do for your clients on projects and what you do as a firm, and how you define that sustainable operations are really two different things. And so there's some great programs out there. Just is a great program that you can use as a guide. There's also this is not publicly available yet, but AIA is planning on making it available. And there's a guiding, we call it a playbook, that was the Large Firm Roundtable that AIA developed. And it gives you a kind of a metric way of helping you define what your goals want to be and what that means to actually get there. So it's, it kind of says, is this something that's important to you as a firm? Yes. Okay. And these are, if you're just doing it, here's what you're doing. If you want to be on the high side of high level of achievement, these are the things that you would need to be doing. And that allows you to decide, okay, well, how do we get, because it's not going to be the same path for every firm.
So we have a question here in the chat from Marjan Pearson. Since Moody Nolan is developing integrated and responsive solutions, so how have you extended the collaborative networks, like not only traditional design disciplines, but also maybe economic, behavioral, and social partners in your process? And earlier you mentioned like challenging, how to engage with consultants that challenge Moody Nolan. I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, I think we're architects. We do have some specialists on staff, but for the most part, we're looking for, we need help. I guess an example of that would be the classic on the energy side. If you've got an engineer who does net zero energy buildings, and has multiple of them in their portfolio, my expectation is they're coming in and challenging at the beginning, this is what a net zero energy design process kind of look like, at least on the energy side. So we need to be talking about these things in schematic design. We need to be making these proposals to the client, and having a basic understanding of return on investment, what that might look like. So those are, I think, if you have, and I'll use the old, if you've got consultants who are, well, you let me know when you want me to put a system in my building. That's not the kind of consultant that we're looking for. And I think that applies to our landscape architecture. We have interior design in-house, but any of the consultants that are wanting to come in and provide that kind of design challenge, I think is really what we're looking for. And I think the other side is that there's more of an interest of clients in engaging community in climate justice, equity. So what does that look like? We're working on a project right now in Columbus for a charter school who serves economically challenged part of the community. And part of that solution is the contractor is developing a program, again, as we all are struggling with the talent in construction and design fields, of getting to these students early. So this is a K-12, and they're developing a program to engage the students in the school through the construction process. So getting them to have a feel for what it'd be like by not just learning about it in the classroom, but getting them on site. So that is a very, hands-on, community-based solution that we're trying to figure out ways to do in order to really be responsive to the community, but also to our industry in general, because we've got to get talent into this. Back to my first comment about we got to change. So to me, it's not me making those sorts of changes, because it's got to be getting that kind of idea from the the younger generation, because they're the ones who are really going to push that.
This is a great follow-up question to the point you just made. Moody Nolan's growth has been organic, but what would you describe as Moody Nolan's BHAG, or as the term is here, or big, hairy, audacious goal?
Well, I think our current CEO is Jonathan Moody, so it's Kurt's son. I think that goal is we want to be a 100-year-old firm. We want to be here 100 years, and Jonathan, Kurt want a Moody to still be part of that ownership. So I think that's, so how do you, and Kurt or Jonathan has done the research, how many architectural firms are 100 years old and what do they look like? And that was an interest. He gave a little summary of that a little while ago. That was pretty interesting. There aren't that many out there, and that still are owned in some form by the family, or it's not always just about family, but that close connectivity from the original owners. That's a tough one to do that, to have that. So and which is exciting for me, because I want to be part of that, helping that happen, because I believe that Moody Nolan, we're able to provide a vast diversity of services in so many different ways that I think we can do that, and it'll evolve. We won't look like we are now, but I think that's the big vision that we have.
Well, with only 5 minutes left now, I'd love if we could do a quick round of lightning questions that relate to,
Sure.
We've been asking everybody in our 1,000 interviews series. So
Okay.
You answered the first one, but I'll move forward with, what do you geek out on?
Living building.
What questions are top of mind for you right now?
Dealing with our growth. How do we grow that structured growth? We had 9 new people start this week, and we have more coming.
How does your work inform your philosophy and vice versa?
Well, my core philosophy actually comes from from the Lorax. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So for me, it goes both ways of, I care about this stuff. So the only way it's going to get better is if I do something, but to that, looking for those people who really care to help make change. That's to me, that's what I'm about.
How'd you get your professional start?
My dad was an electrician, self-employed, so he had his own company. So I've been on construction sites for a long time, but I wasn't really interested in doing one piece. I was interested in the whole thing. So that really got me going.
What's a lesson that you didn't learn in school?
Great design results are very, very, very hard. It's not just you're not your own client, and you don't build it like in school. So it's really hard to do great stuff.
What do you like the least about practice in the building industry?
Unrealistic expectations, either from the client, from consultants, even on ourselves.
What's your advice to your younger self?
Take bigger calculated risks, because in failure, you learn so much.
And what's a mistake you can't forget, and what did you learn?
Oh, I was in charge of putting a presentation together one time. I spelled Oklahoma wrong, and the client called me out on it. And luckily, this was a client we'd been working with for a few months, so it was kind of a joke to them. So use spell check, but being cognizant of your current task. I mean, I think this goes to whatever you're doing. Check your own work before you hit send, reread it, have someone else check it if it's something more important. But having that, somebody reviewing what you're doing before it goes.
And we've got Monograph's favorite closing question. This is George's favorite, my co-host, who it's his birthday today. I can't miss the chance to say happy birthday to George. What is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
There's so many of those. I'll say from a professional standpoint, we've got a person who runs at our front desk, and she's kind of our studio mom. I was having just a rough day. She was going crazy, dealing with the things that she's doing. And I walked by her, she noticed, she said, stop. She stopped what she was doing. She came around, she gave me a hug. She just said, you look like you need a hug. And that, of course, this was pre-COVID. So, that to me, just that simple act of acknowledging she knew something was going on. She didn't matter what it was. And she took her own time where she was incredibly busy just to say, it's okay. And to me, I'll never forget that from Karen.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Allen. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Architects are calling Monograph a game changer. Principals and ops leaders use Monograph to run firm operations and manage the back office. It's designed for architects by architects, and we focus on small to mid-sized firms. It helps you see where you are, where you're going to be on all your projects, staffing, and billing. At Section Cut, Tom Jacobs of Correct Sexton Partners in Chicago said, it's how mid-sized firms can operate like big firms. So you can start a free trial today at monograph.com or book a one-on-one demo with our team. And with that, thank you so much, Allen. This was such a pleasure. I can't wait to talk with LaToya and Dawn next month to continue the conversation about Moody Nolan, an incredible firm that was recently given the recognition it has earned by the founders and by the continued work of you and all of your colleagues. So thank you so much, Allen, for joining us today. And thank you so much to all the participants who joined. Marjan, thank you for your questions. So huge pleasure. Thank you so much, Allen.
Thank you for asking, Chris. This was fun.
Yes, absolutely. Have a great rest of your day, and hope to see you at the LaToya and Dawn interview.
Look forward to it.
All right. Bye now.